is measured in very, very small steps. Very small steps. So, Cullen talks about, I think he talks about Groundhog Day. Every day is kind of the same, but it's different. So I would actively look for some type of glimmer or hope or success. Because I'll tell you, in some of these environments, it can become very depressing. Because nothing seems to be going right. Okay? If any of you have been out there, you maybe know what I'm talking about. I mean, it seems like an insurmountable challenge, and you've got more things you've got to get done than you have time. So what is in the realm of the possible, realistic expectations, and what does success look like? Because your soldiers want to know that what they're doing has value. They want to know that they're contributing to something that's worthwhile. And at the end of that experience, guess what? You go talk to any veteran, and you ask them about their service, and hopefully they've got some positive experiences. I mean, otherwise, why serve? So you've got to know what that is, and you've got to be realistic. And that is also going to change in terms of success. It's going to change based on the environment you're in. It's going to change based on your partner. So I'll give you an example of success. We stood up what was called the Iraqi Civil Defense Corps. This was before the Iraqi Army. So these are former soldiers that we recruited and that we vetted and that we trained, formed them into units, and then we started to partner with them. My success was not the number of independent operations they could do or whether they could do a deliberate attack. One of my initial successes was when we make contact with the enemy, nobody deserts and nobody breaks contact. That they maintain their formation intact. Now for a U.S. organization, that's not a good measure of success, but for an Iraqi organization, that's pretty good. And that same unit, a month or two later, when we had an active uprising by both the Shia and the Sunnis, the measure of success was they made contact on their own. My patrol was about 600 meters away, so they made contact. They were by themselves, and all they asked for was a resupply of ammunition. We've made contact with the enemy. We're not going to pull back. I don't need U.S. reinforcements, but I do need some extra 7.62 ammunition. That's success. May not seem like a lot. And so if you spend hours and hours and hours partnering with the ICDC, the Iraqi Civil Defense Corps, and you've got soldiers that sometimes get frustrated, disgruntled because they're not doing the battle drill right, and they're not taking it seriously, and they're not disciplined, and they're not doing it like we would do it. But they make contact with the enemy, they hold intact, and guess what? We can all go back that night, and we can say we were successful today. And we can be grateful for that, because tomorrow it may not be quite the same. Because that same unit 2 months later had a leader assassinated, and they left their post. So you got to know what success is, and you got to be able to explain that to your soldiers. You got to develop a trusted network. You're not only trying to establish trust, you're trying to figure out who, and this applies, I think, in any organization, not even if you're in combat and counterinsurgency. Who's your trusted network as a leader? Who are you going to talk to get the truth? Right? Because you all know this, you got to figure out who you can rely on, either formally or informally, to get feedback, to float ideas by. If it's the population, who can you talk to get intelligence and trust? Who's your trusted network? And you all need them. As a lieutenant, you got to have a trusted network. Whether it's your peers, whether it's somebody in the organization, who can you trust for advice and feedback? If you had a comment or a question.
Sir, I just want to touch on that trust. I know you talked about when you first got there, you had to build that trust with the local civilian population, but he talked about it with training the squad leaders and then being able to trust them. How does that tie in with trusting the platoon when you're going in blind, kind of with no narrative, no shared understanding? So how are you able to build that within your
You will have, in the end, one of the most important things, and I know you know this, for a military organization is the trust, shared trust among leaders and soldiers, leaders. So you, as the leader, if you've trained them properly, you've got to trust and you've got to underwrite the decisions they make. Even if it's something that you would have done it slightly differently, you've got to support that because you weren't there with them. It's contrary to, we didn't call it mission command at the time. It's absolutely fundamental to that trust. It's your responsibility to train people to think in a way, not think like you, but to approach problems in a similar way, so that even though we're each individuals, we kind of frame a problem in a certain way that's with some consistency. I mean, that you've gotta do, that's what the commander's intent is, right? I mean, so that I may not be there, but I know and I trust that he, 2 levels down, is gonna make the best decision based on the information that he has, and then I'm gonna support that decision. You have absolutely got to do that. It's absolute fundamental, it's not just to counterinsurgency, it's to everything we do. It's, you've gotta look for ways to foster and reinforce and reward that trust. The other imperative that I learned is, you're always being watched. And I think, again, this applies to an officer in the military, it applies to, I think, a leader in any organization, is you're always being watched, okay? So, not just you, but your organization is always being watched. So remember, I talked about the narrative, I talked about credibility, you're being watched. And people, in this kind of environment, in the counterinsurgency, you're trying to establish trust and you're trying to build a legitimate government, so they're gonna watch the things that you do and the things that you don't do. So I'll give you 2 examples of trust. As we were trying to figure out this environment, and I told you I spent a lot of time with the city council, we were also, this is what's ironic about a counterinsurgency. By day, I was meeting with civic leaders, establishing a local government. I was meeting with the judge for the area, I was meeting for the mayor, I was meeting with police chiefs, and by night, we were doing cordon searches and raids and detaining people on our high priority list. And this very prominent Sunni imam, who was a part of the city council, in a council meeting, poked me in the chest and said, you are basically violating every principle that we stand for when you come in unannounced at night and you knock on our doors, or you knock down our doors, and you take away the military-aged males. And he said, what I am offering to you is, if you vet with me in advance the list of people you're interested in, we will bring them to you as elders of this council, and you won't have to go in the middle of the night. And I said I would agree to that. Why not? Give it a try. Because I'll tell you, our success rate was, it'll never be 100%. So if I'm out there looking for bad guy X in the middle of the night, trying to figure out where bad guy X is and where he lives and stuff, it takes some work. So you don't always get the right guy. And so I figured, why not? And so I said we would try it for a while. And so it made it conditional. We came into an agreement. And then I had a tough time selling it with my leaders and soldiers, but it worked for a period of time where we were selective. So it forced us to be much more refine our intel, refine the evidence that we had that we wanted to go after somebody, and then I would present the name to the council members, and they would literally bring them to the front gate of the outpost and say, and they would bring them with this individual's tribal leader and say, we're bringing you so-and-so for questioning. And I honored that. I honored that for as long as we were there. Now, there's some folks that probably criticize that. And our number of captures went down a little bit, but the number of folks that we actually prosecuted and turned over and turned into the detention facility went up. Because, so, that's an example of trust, though, is that, my soldiers had to trust my decision, and the council had to trust when I said we would not go in and knock, and so, we had to change the way we were doing things, because we used to go in the middle of the night and do that. So that's trust. Another example of trust, going back again to the Iraqi Civil Defense Force, is we got to the point with them later on, they never did independent operations, but we always had to let them know that we had their back. So we used to call it a guardian angel, keeping an eye on time. We had a unit fairly close by that could reinforce them, or I had mortar or artillery fire that could reinforce them, or I had close air support that could reinforce them. That would embolden them, give them the confidence to do what they needed to do, but they knew that if they came up against something where they were kind of at their limits, they could pick up the phone and the coalition would be there to respond. So trust is absolutely critical. You have a comment or no?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes,
So I read that, you said you never have enough linguists, right?
Never have
Is
enough
the
linguists.
Is the language barrier, how did that, like?
you end up finding linguists. I mean, we had, battalion commander had a linguist, we had enough linguists so that each company commander had a linguist. Team leaders didn't have linguists. So we had to recruit and find local folks and pay them. You know, they didn't have a DLI test, they didn't have a security clearance, but we found them, we eventually trusted them, because you have to be able to speak and communicate. So, and we never had enough linguists. But that's just something we had to work on and recruit folks to do that. And they put themselves at risk by doing that. We had interpreters and linguists who were murdered. We had interpreters and linguists whose family members were abducted and things like that. Because remember, this whole insurgent thing is going on. The other imperative that I would tell you is you got to be ready for setbacks every single day. So you can decide what you need to do, and you can have a narrative, and you can know what you're trying to accomplish, and you can have outcomes, but there are going to be setbacks, things that you cannot foresee. So we had spent a lot of time and effort on this one police station at a key location inside the city. And we had trained the police, and we had worked with them, and we had outfitted them. We'd sent them through academies, we'd done patrols together, we'd got them police cars, we had fortified their police station, and they were doing a big recruiting event one day, and a VBID came in and killed over 100 people that they were trying to recruit as police officers. And it was a massive vehicle-borne IED, destroyed the front of the police station, and co-located with the police station was the mayor's office. The mayor, who was part of my trusted network and a Shia, was so frazzled that he went into hiding. That's a setback. So you've worked for months, and you've trained, and you've equipped, and you've emboldened this organization, and you've got a political ally, and the enemy strikes a blow. And now again, your narrative's gonna change, and you've gotta figure out how you're gonna deal with it. But you have gotta be ready for setbacks. And the point about leadership is, leaders respond to setbacks. That's not the time that you can say, woe is me, I give up, we're going home. You as the leader are gonna be expected, okay boss, now what do we do? So prepare for setbacks, because they're gonna be there. And I think the last imperative is, and it goes back to the trust, is you have to be able to, as a leader, and as you gain experience, you've got to be able to assess risk and underwrite acceptable risk among your folks. And that's not to say that you are flippant, that's not to say that you are casual, or that you shoot from the hip. Oh, no. But you've got to willing to, nothing ventured, nothing gained is absolutely true. You've got to be willing to take risk as an individual, a military leader. As an entrepreneur, as we saw from earlier, you've got to be willing to take risk. And you as a leader have got to underwrite your subordinates' ability to take risk. You've got to encourage it. And you've got to look for ways in the organization to reinforce risk-taking. Okay? And you can be a prudent risk-taker without being deviant or putting yourself or others in danger. But you got to figure out how to do that. And that's incredibly important. And no one will tell you how to do that, but you've got to be able to do it. I'm going to go through some expectations now, because we spent a lot of time, and we've only got, I want to leave a little more time if you got some other questions. But these are kind of the things that I have developed for my expectations of lieutenants. And I've got a lot of different opportunities. Once upon a time I was a lieutenant, but I've interacted, and hopefully I've developed and I've influenced lieutenants. So I'm just going to share them with you, take them for what they're worth. Maybe some of these things you've heard before, maybe you haven't. But the first thing that I expect of a lieutenant is that you are competent in whatever. So you've got, going back to the generalist and the specialist, my expectation is you're a specialist. My expectation is you've learned everything that you can learn, and you've tried to master it. You're always learning, but you are competent. So as an infantry officer, you're competent with your small arms, you're competent in small unit tactics, you understand how to use the systems that are organic to your organization, you know how to employ your organization, you're competent. You understand the doctrine, et cetera, et cetera. Number 2 is trustworthy. Goes back to this comment. One of the absolute most important things is establishing trust. And remember that you're always being watched. So from the moment you meet people, from the moment you introduce yourself, you're going to be working to establish trust. It's like a bank account. You make deposits, you make withdrawals. You got to be working your tail off to make deposits in this trust account. And you got to be very, 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 very sparing in your withdrawals because some of them are irrecoverable. I mean, trust is absolutely fundamental. Okay? So my assumption is, my expectation is that I trust you, and you can be trusted. And I'm going to treat you that way. And most individuals will respond and they will thrive in that environment. That's been my experience. But if you have actions that kind of countermand that trust, in which you over-supervise, the overword used to micromanage, you can erode that trust that you're trying to establish. And be straight up with folks. You know, if somebody asks you for your opinion, give them your opinion. If somebody asks you for the status, don't fudge the truth. Tell the truth. Because if somebody thinks that you misinformed them intentionally or you lied, I mean, I wouldn't tolerate it. I've not tolerated it. And most people that I've ever served with would not tolerate that. It's absolutely fundamental. And that's just, I mean, you all are trustworthy people or you wouldn't be in this program. But I'm just telling you how important that is and how important it should be to you as a leader. My expectation is you're going to be candid with me and I'm going to be candid with you. What I mean by that is I don't have all of the answers. As a leader, in my case with 30 years of service, I don't have all the answers. Okay? But if I'm going to work with you and I am your leader, I'm going to be candid with you. And I'm going to tell you from my perspective what I think you're good at, and I'm going to tell you what I think you need to work on. So get some thick skin. There's a way to do that professionally where I don't assault you as an individual. But, you know, it goes back to this confidence versus narcissism. Some folks don't feel real comfortable when they're being told you need to work on X, Y, or Z. So develop a thick skin, be candid, and look for that feedback, and I think you'll thrive. Always care for the well-being of your soldiers. And that is not to coddle them, that is not to always see things their way, but have their welfare in mind. And sometimes care is increasing discipline, increasing standards, increasing workload. But that's what you're responsible for, is your soldiers. You care for them. You should have the mentality that nobody cares for them more than me, nobody knows them better than me, and you're going to do everything you can to try to answer those two. You're going to try to get to know them personally and professionally, and you're going to do everything you can to try to care for them. You would want nothing less. If it was your brother or sister, that's what you expect of your leaders. You want to be cared for. And someday if you're a mother or father, that's what you would expect of your son and daughter. You would want leaders who care. Take responsibility from the first day. No excuses. Take responsibility for your actions and your organization's actions. It's not always going to be perfect. You should always strive for improvement. You know, you got the feedback from the current events thing. But take responsibility. That is a sign of adulthood, number one. And that is also a sign of a leader of character, taking responsibility. You're the one that's in charge. It wasn't the person that came before you. Well, they haven't had a leader for a couple of months, or the platoon sergeant's been the leader. No, you're in charge. Take charge. Take responsibility. Be passionate about what it is you're about to do. If you're not excited about it, then I would question why you've gone through this whole process, because it's an awesomely satisfying experience, from my perspective. Be passionate. My experience says that people want to be around other people that like what they're doing, that enjoy challenges, that enjoy solving problems, that enjoy accomplishing things, and that enjoy doing it as a team. That's what separates us from a lot of other things. You know, if you've never thought of yourself as a member of a team, then start thinking of yourselves as a member of a team. It's not about you. I know you've heard that before. It's not about you. It's about your soldiers, and it's about your organization. And if you focus on that, then it will be about you, and you'll get immense satisfaction from that. But you got to be passionate about it. And you can be passionate. I'm an introvert, you know. If given a choice, I would sit at home reading a book by myself, okay? But by gosh, I'm passionate about what I do. People know that. So be passionate, okay? It's infectious, especially with setbacks, especially when things don't go according to plan, especially when Murphy throws a curveball or a couple of curveballs. Be passionate about what you do. I expect that you can communicate in writing, and more importantly, verbally. You can express yourself, you can express educated opinions, and you can give me recommendations and courses of action. And I know you all have focused on those two skills in ROTC, and they apply to anything, but they're incredibly important as a leader. Is communication. Physical fitness goes without saying. That'll never change. Your goal ought to be the most fit individual in your organization. You may not be that person, but you should be trying to do that, regardless of whether you're going active or reserve, regardless of branch. It's the fundamentally, it's the one thing that units do every single day in the active army, physical training. You don't go to the small arms range every day. You don't go to the demo range. You don't set up your JNNs and your commo sites and your aids, but you do PT every day. At least I hope you do. At least the army that I'm in, you do PT every day. You need to be physically fit. You need to lead from the front, and it's not just a maxim. That's why I think ROTC still places that much of an emphasis on it. You know, my expectation of infantry platoon leaders from day one, you can lead your organization, whether it's a run, whether it's a total body workout, whether it's a row march. There's no time to prepare, so take every opportunity you can to do that. That's how important fitness is. It also helps with your confidence, it also helps with your passion, it also helps with setbacks. It's all interrelated in terms of resiliency. Moral and physical courage. Absolutely expected of you. You have the values and the character, my expectation. I'm going to work with you on making sure that you have Army values. You've been exposed to them a little bit. But I have the expectation that you're a person of moral character, that understands right from wrong. It doesn't require me to look over your shoulder to do right from wrong. Because you can never operate in the types of environments that we have operated or we will operate in if you don't have that. That is the absolute foundation of a person's decision-making process, in my ability. And when the going gets tough, we all revert back to our inner moral character, whatever that voice is. My expectation is that you know what's right from wrong, and that you expect that of your individuals within your organization. Moral and physical courage, because the two are different. Moral courage is when you go in and you spot check the arms room on a Friday afternoon after you've been in the field for 4 days, and all anybody was thinking about is going home. But the weapons don't meet the cleanliness standards. The moral courage is, platoon sergeant, we're not going home, draw the weapons back out and re-clean the weapons. That's moral courage. Some do it, some don't. Some say, you know what, it's not a big deal. My experience says is that when you compromise your integrity and your courage, you start chipping away at that underpinning, you're more likely to do it again and again and again. So my expectation is you have moral and physical courage. My expectation is when the decision's made, whether it's my decision or somebody else's, you're going to do everything in your ability to ensure this success. We support and defend democracy, but we're not a democracy, and you know that. So when the boss, whoever that boss is, makes a decision, you're gonna ensure you do everything you can for mission success. Sometimes that's competing loyalties, because sometime the commander is gonna make a decision that doesn't rest well with you or your soldiers. And if you're given the opportunity to provide your take or your feedback, and you're asked to be candid, great. When the boss makes a decision, move out. That's the way it is. You would expect that of your subordinates. Your leaders expect that of you. I expect that of you. My expectation is that every single day, you're gonna figure out where you need to be located within your organization. Where's that decisive point today? What's the most important thing that the organization is doing today, or this week, or this month? And my expectation is you're there. I'm probably not gonna tell you what that is. I might tell you what it is. You may have to figure it out. And then you've gotta decide, you've gotta figure out where you can apply your influence. Don't be the squad leader, don't be the platoon sergeant, don't be the team leader, be the lieutenant. And figure out how you can be value added in that situation, whatever that situation is. So do your job, be at the right place. And you know, it sounds basic, but a lot of folks get that wrong. You gotta figure out where you need to be every day. My expectation is you're always gonna strive for organizational improvement. You're always gonna assess. I'm not gonna wait to be assessed by somebody else. But I'm gonna take the time, and I'm gonna assess, and I'm gonna make my leaders assess. And I'm gonna reinforce that. We're always gonna strive to be better. My expectation is you're gonna take initiative. You're not gonna be told what to do. My expectation is you're gonna set the example every single day. How you look, your fitness, and your conduct on and off duty. I know you've probably heard this, but it's absolutely true. It's another thing that separates us from civilian professions is you are on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And remember my comment about people always watching you. So don't be the lieutenant that shows up late for formation, or forgets to shave for PT, or falls out of a platoon run, or is late for staff duty. I'm not making this stuff up. I mean, I've seen it 100 times. Don't be that person. Strive to be the kind of person that other people want to be like. Be yourself, but set the example. You can set the example and still be learning, and still be an apprentice. Nobody expects a lieutenant to have all the answers. You all are going to be apprentices. You're learning your trade. And you ought to be eager and anxious to learn your trade. And you do it with humility. But you set the example in your approach, and your willingness to learn, your willingness to lead, your willingness to get better every day. And my last expectation is you'll have fun. You'll enjoy what you're doing, and you'll enjoy who you're doing it with. And you'll enjoy the profession, whether you're only in it for a couple of years, or you choose to do it for however long, but you'll have fun. So those are a set of things that are kind of, I've tried to live by, I've tried to operate by, and I've tried to convey on other folks. And we are about out of time. Anybody have any comments or questions?
Sir, so like kind of caught my attention when you initially said, like, as a battalion commander, the initial years of I guess the Iraqi conflict, that you didn't receive like an intent or an op order, and I don't know.
No, what I said was initially we did.
Initially, yes, and that's something that we harp on so much here. And I mean, I don't know, as like prior service, most of the things we learn, especially this semester, we have a warm and fuzzy, but that really caught my attention.
I mean, you have to give your organization some type of marching orders. I'm just saying that initially we had no written order until we were on the ground and we had a chance to start figuring things out, and then I could interact with my higher headquarters. We did eventually get an order, but initially we didn't. So we produced an order based on the information that we had and what I thought was important, and that's what kind of drove our organization, at least initially. And then we continued to frag it as the situation changed. Silence in the room. Hey, listen, I wanna just, I wanna close by thanking you all for what you chose to do. Should be pretty exciting for you. My hope is that you find it to be an awesome experience. My hope is that your expectations are met. My hope is that you find it satisfying, professionally and personally rewarding. My hope is that you have a greater appreciation about 6 or 8 months or a year from now of the time that you were back here, because you'll realize that maybe there were some things that you should have paid a little bit more attention to, or maybe you'll say, well, you know, this was a really good foundational experience. But they need you out there. Soldiers are desperate for good leaders, right? And the folks of you all that have been prior service, you know that. You've been one, you know the deal, so you can share with your classmates. They're looking for somebody like you to be their leader. And in the end, that is such a huge responsibility, but such an awesome thing. To be coming into an organization, regardless of what type of it is, where people are hungry and thirsty for that type of leader, and then to be able to work together and do whatever it is you're asked to do. And none of us can predict what it's gonna be. It might be counterinsurgency, it might be something. I'll just tell you, it's gonna be something. You're gonna be asked to do something. And you're gonna be asked to roll up your sleeves and get after it. And I think you have the foundations, and I wish you the absolute best